space is dropped. It's a new edition of Soccer Down here, Tuesday, January 14th. We're taking your Tuesday thoughts all morning long on Twitter at Soccer Down here. We had I think a very even poll this morning for where you guys wanted to start. One of the most even morning polls we've done here. We'll probably get into all of those topics. There were some off-the-board suggestions as well, and let's go ahead and get that out of the way because it's probably what we have the least information about. So a lot of questions about Edgar Castillo being part of training yesterday. One, a lot of conclusions were jumped to about people not reporting it. He wasn't there in the morning unless everybody missed it. They did 2 sessions yesterday. There was an afternoon session after media had left, and that's going to happen quite a bit, I think, in this next week until they go to Bradenton. You're running 2 sessions. It's preseason. That's what you do. So I believe it was Tito Villalba who posted a picture that had Edgar Castillo in it. And started to make the rounds. So, teams aren't obligated to post preseason rosters. Some do, some don't. Just really depends on what you want to do. Guys who aren't under contract are not under contract. Edgar Castillo is not under contract anywhere right now. His option was declined by New England. He went through all of the re-entry and free agency, what have you. He's free to go wherever he wants to go. A player in a very similar situation is Bradley Wright Phillips, who is in camp with LAFC. You're going to see this. Castillo's a veteran player. He's a left back. 20 starts last year, 28 in 2018. We talked about it last night on the combination show. I thought Castillo's 2018 with Colorado was outstanding. He didn't have that same impact in New England last year. New England was also a dumpster fire for half the season, so it's a little hard to guess. He's also 2 years removed from that good season in Colorado. He's 33 years old. Is he going to be a guy who comes in and gives you 34 starts? Probably not, although we've seen Jordan Harvey, Steven Beitashour be able to do that with LAFC at that kind of age. Could Castillo? I don't know. Last year didn't look great, and it's hard to say how much of that was with New England and how much of that was just age catching up, the amount of minutes. This is a guy who's been a long-time veteran playing in Mexico. So he's not under contract. If he's training, he has an opportunity to make a roster. And you're going to be looking at anything that's available to make your roster better right now. That's what this time of year is all about. You've got this week before the team goes down to Bradenton. You've got games there that are not open to the public, a couple that are open to the media. And then you have your first public preseason match on February 8th. You've got a lot of time between today and then to take a look at guys, to take a look at what's available in the big sense of it. And everybody has said that there are new additions coming. Don't know if Castillo is going to be one of those or not.
And just as a guidepost, I guess, between now and mid-February for any team, not just Atlanta United, even though that's what we're discussing, and Edgar Castillo, the discussion about Bradley Wright Phillips and him having his tires kicked by a team. So you're going to see names, you're going to see players in locations. Does it mean that they're going to be locked into those locations? No, you're going to have guys who are going to have to prove themselves, and that's what this time of year is for. So it's a part of the silly season dynamic that you're going to have guys who may be in a camp, wander into a camp, get a phone call, sit there and go, okay, we want to see what you've got. And then it's up to that player and whatever the situation is for the team, whether it's behind closed doors or in exhibitions, to prove themselves and sit there and say, yeah, you're worthy of being on a roster. And, that's where things are. So you're going to see names floated. Just don't be surprised by that if somebody's looking to be employed for the 2020 season.
Yeah, I'll go past just names being floated. I mean, you're going to see guys train. You're going to see guys come in for training sessions. You're going to see guys come in for interviews. You're going to see these things happen. New York City has an opportunity with this Florida Cup to bring in some guys and take a look. And one of them is a local goalkeeper, Cody Mizell, who is in camp with them, maybe just for this tournament because Sean Johnson's away with the national team. Maybe it leads to something more. You never know. And that's what preseason's all about. So when guys come in, and let's take it to the big picture here beyond just guys who are on trial. Brad Gazan talked about it yesterday. These are guys who are very competitive, very hungry. These are guys who want to play every minute of every game that they're suited up for. And it's a team, but it's also these individuals fighting for their careers. And when you bring in a guy like a Castillo or a guy like Bradley Wright Phillips, who's out of contract, they're fighting to make an impression. When you compare that to guys who are already on the roster, who are maybe not in the role they want to be, fighting to make an impression. Guys who are in a role that they want to be in, they want to keep that role. They're fighting to keep it. That's what preseason's all about. That's what you need to look for when you get into these actual preseason matches, is who is making an impact, who is potentially changing where you slot them on the depth chart.
Right.
And that's what preseason's going to be down to, because it does create some opportunities for guys. You know, you go in with an idea as a depth chart and who's a penciled-in starter. That can change after these first 6 weeks of training.
And, you know, so once again, just kind of take what you see and just understand it at its face value, because there are a couple of different angles.
Well, understand you're not going to see everything.
True.
That's maybe the number one thing to drill out here is you're not going to see everything. You're not going to see much. There's a lot of guys who are going to be in training that you're not going to know about. There's a lot of guys who are going to play in closed-door matches that you're not going to see. There's a lot of stuff that happens this time of year behind closed doors, because when you look at it, there are other clubs out there looking to better their team.
Yes.
So you don't want to tell everybody what you're doing. You don't want to put it out there on blast for everybody to see what you're doing, because there's other teams that need left backs. There's other teams that might say, you know what? We should give him a call. Yes. He's not under contract. Let's bring him in. And then you get into those types of situations. So when you get frustrated because everything isn't spelled out for you, understand how competitive it is with these teams, because sometimes it's the smallest of margins. It's hitting on one of these types of signings. It's scouting a player that everybody else has missed, or putting a player into a role that maybe other teams haven't seen before. Those are the things that separate a 60-point season from a 70-point season. Those are the things that get you one more win in a season. Those are the things that prepare you to win one more postseason game that keeps you going. It's those little margins. So that's why not everything is spelled out. Like, we're thinking about player 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and the top teams really don't spell it out so far for you. That's by design. Yeah,
and it's that difference between the 60-point season and the 70-point season isn't necessarily players 1 through 11. It's player 15, 16, 17, and 18, and how they contribute over the course of an entire season. And it's finding that guy between 15 and 24 on your roster that you know is going to help you in certain situations and can get you through multiple competitions and schedule compression, and being a guy that can be in multiple positions on a roster. It's like, I need you here on this day, but then I need you here on a different day. It's guys, pretty much for me, it would be like guys 13 through 24 that you're looking to fill your space with here.
Yeah, well, and it might not even be the first guys off the bench, because, you know, we've seen it before. How important was Mikey Ambrose in 2018? How important was Chris McCann in 2018? Guys like that can help win you championships, because you're going to have an injury somewhere. You're going to have a player lose form somewhere. You're going to have a suspension somewhere. You're going to have somebody step up. And you're going to get into these situations where it's that guy that might have 3 starts in the season. One of those could be as important as anything else in the year. And you just never know. That's why you're looking at players like Edgar Castillo, like Bradley Wright Phillips, other veterans who are out of contract. It's why you're looking at USL guys if you're an NYC with a player like Cody Mizell. You know, the number 2 goalkeeper situation for New York City, kind of wide open. I don't think anybody has truly put a lock on it. Cody Mizell's played a lot of games in USL. I don't think he's going to step in and be freaked out by being in goal for New York City. Can he make that jump? Can he take advantage of this opportunity in front of him? We'll have to wait and see. Let's get to the winner of the poll, and it was best/worst off seasons. There's still a lot of moves out there. And I think this will look different by the time we get to preseason. By the time we get to like the Tucson Sun Cup, by the time we get to CONCACAF for those teams, by the time we get to mid-February, I think there's going to be some teams that jump into these conversations on the best side. And there might be some teams that have deals that you kind of feel like are close, that you don't want to put them in the worst offseason just yet. But if they don't happen, they're going to end up there. I look at a team like DC United as a prime example of that.
Yep.
It sounds like they're so close on a few different moves. Edison Flores is one that, I mean, he was eating at a Peruvian restaurant in the DC area. You would think that it's pretty close to being done. It hasn't been announced yet. I don't want to put them in the worst offseason just yet, even though they've lost Rooney, they've lost Acosta. They've got a lot of holes. It sounds like they're at least in the process of filling them. So I'm not going to put them in the worst offseason side right now. Right now, the 4 teams that jump out to me with the worst offseason. Chicago.
Yeah.
Lost Dax McCarty, Bastian Schweinsteiger, Alexander Katai, Nemanja Nikolic. Nothing coming in that changes that. You have Alvaro Madran. You're talking about a player with Champions League experience. Good. But that's it. You have a homegrown signing in Nicolas Slonina, and that's all. It's a lot of absences from a team that was already bad. So Chicago, alphabetical order, they're the first one that hits my list. Minnesota's next.
Yep.
And Minnesota is next because they've lost Darwin Quintero. They've lost Abu Dunladi. They've only added Marlon Hairston. There's been a lot of talk about different guys. I'm still waiting to see if the Luis Amarilla situation is going to work out in Minnesota's favor. It's felt like he's been trying to find a better offer than Minnesota. It sounded like, okay, it's going to happen. Well, now somebody else has come in the picture. Okay, no, it's going to be Minnesota. Now somebody else has come in the picture. It sounds like he might end up in Minnesota, but it might not be his first choice. Not a great situation. We'll see if it happens. There's reports that he could be headed to Minnesota later this week. I'm still skeptical. I don't feel as strongly as I have about the DC stuff. Maybe it's the Peruvian restaurant. I don't know. Maybe I feel like that move's going to happen because the guy's actually been spotted in the city. We'll wait and see on Minnesota. Red Bulls is the next one for me. You've lost your starting goalkeeper in Luis Robles. You have lost Bradley Wright Phillips. Now, he did not have the 2019 that he'd had previously, but that's still a big figure to lose from your team. And you've lost Michael Murillo. And you probably kind of sort of lost him last season anyway. When you're deciding to play Reese Buckmaster instead, it sounded like Murillo wanted to make the move sooner than he did. He's off to Anderlecht now. They're not really linked to anybody. They've signed 2 players from New York Red Bulls too, in Jared Stroud and Chris Lima. Good players. I like Lima a lot. Stroud's a good player, but Lima's a player that I've really liked for a long time. They added Kendall McIntosh in the re-entry draft. Don't know if he's going to end up being the starting goalkeeper or not. I don't know what the Red Bulls are going to look like. And with the East getting so much better, I don't know if they're going to be good enough to compete. We know the system is the star in Jersey. We know that's what they do. You know you can slot guys in and get performances. All that's true. But when you've lost the talent they've lost over the last few years and haven't replaced it, the system can only do so much. And it feels like it's going to get really tested this year. Seattle is the biggest one for me, because Seattle has not added one player. They've lost 3 of their 4 starters on the back line. Brad Smith on the left side, gone. Kim Keehee, center back, gone. Roman Torres, center back, gone. Chad Marshall retired before the year was even done. Victor Rodriguez, attacker, gone, even though they do have other options in the attack. They've added 0. I'm not buying Garth Lagerwey's comments about it's all the CBA as to why they haven't added anybody. I think them and Toronto are the only teams that have not added one player as of yet.
Yes.
Everybody else has added at least one. And Seattle's coming off an MLS Cup. You know, the bullseye is going to be out for them. They needed to get better defensively anyway. And now, I mean, their roster overall is very thin, but their roster defensively, even when you move players out of the midfield into the back line, it's incredibly thin. They're going to have a lot of work to do, and maybe they've got a lot of things under wraps. I just don't know if they have a lot of impact moves under wraps. I think it's going to be really hard for them to defend their title.
Nope, right there with you. I mean, when you look at what hasn't come in, and you said it is glaring when you look at the Seattle list, and ain't nobody coming in yet. So I agree with you. I'm 3 for 3 with you so far. Who's your number 4?
I said 4.
Oh, Toronto was your 4th?
No, I said 4. Chicago, Minnesota, Red Bulls, and Seattle.
Ah, okay.
John's on vacation, by the way, so you know he's still contributing, but maybe half of the brain's out on the beach. It's probably raining, but it still might be out there.
Oh, okay. Yes. No, I was going to ask about Toronto and Vancouver, where Toronto doesn't have anybody in yet, considering who's out the door, even though they weren't large players.
That's why it's not a big deal. They
Benezet,
haven't lost anybody major.
Right. So, Benezet, although I like Colorado picking up Benezet, I like that as a pickup. But
that's different. We're talking bad off seasons first. Toronto's lost Benezet. They're expected to get an impact winger. So I feel like Toronto maybe made their best move of the offseason in getting Michael Bradley back on a TAM deal.
Right.
So it's not a player coming in, but that's a pretty good offseason move. Seattle's got nothing to hang their hat on.
Nope. Then let me ask you about Vancouver. Does the fact that they picked up Cavallini and Cavallini only put them at like a number 5 for you, or where would you put Vancouver?
It's important that they got Cavallini, and I don't think you can say they've had a worse offseason than Chicago, Minnesota, Red Bulls, or Seattle, because you've added a top scorer.
Right.
But there's still a lot of work to do. For me, when I'm judging best offseason, worst offseason, I'm judging it off what they've done, not what they needed to do as much. Even Minnesota, you could make the argument that they've needed to get a forward even more. I mean, we'll see if it happens, because they just didn't have that consistent goal scorer last season. I'm looking at it more from Quintero leaving too with the Loons. Is they just haven't replaced the guys they've lost, let alone addressed other issues. Vancouver's at least brought in Cavallini, which is a really good addition. The guys that Vancouver has lost, nothing critical outside of Daniel Henry, but you had other options there. I just think Vancouver's a little bit ahead of these others because of Cavallini. Chicago, Minnesota, Red Bull, Seattle, none of them have added anyone near the caliber of Lucas Cavallini.
Agreed. And let's see if I can count to 4 this time. Who's had your best?
The best, I got 5, actually. So in alphabetical order, Cincinnati is the best, is the first one alphabetically. You've added Medunjanin. You've added Kubo, who's probably going to play more as a winger or a second forward, according to Ron Jans. You've added a center back in Pedersen, who a lot of people are very, very high on. Cincinnati had a lot of work to do, but you've added 3 good players, and it sounds like you're getting close to adding a 4th, another designated player. So keep an eye on that one. Columbus, Darlington Nagbe. You've added 2 center backs in Vito Vormgor and Axel Schuberg. You've added the number 10 that you needed in Lucas Zelarayan, who could be a transformational kind of player for them. The Crew, great offseason. New England, which was already good coming in because of what Bruce Arena did in turning that team around, but you've added a left back in Alexander Butner. You've also added depth there in Seth Sinovic. You've added another forward in Adam Buksa, and I want to see kind of how everything fits with him. And you've added another defender in Kamara. So New England was already trending in the right direction, but they've done well with their moves. Orlando's been outstanding. You've added Andres Perea, holding midfielder. You've added another central midfielder in Junior Urso. You've added 2 different center backs in Antonio Carlos, Rodrigo Schlegel. There's other players linked to Orlando too, so they could climb even higher up, but Orlando's had a good offseason. And Sporting Kansas City, and it's mainly down to Pulido, because you're getting the Golden Boot winner in Mexico from last season into a team that desperately needed a number 9. So Kyrie Shelton could end up being a really nice addition as well. We'll see about Roberto Punchek, the center back that they've added, but Pulido puts Kansas City on this list for me because I think he's going to end up having a big year for Sporting.
Yep, right there with you, 4 for 4. And for me, I guess on the outs.
It was 5.
5, right. You're 5 in your 4 spots. I forgot about that. So then let me ask you about Houston.
Okay.
So with Houston bringing in Darwin Quintero, Valentin signing the homegrown in Palomino, and then they just added Marco Maric, where would Houston be? Would Houston be middle of the pack or more toward your 5 and your 4 spots?
I think Houston's going to have potentially some subtractions, so I'm waiting to see how it all shakes out. Quintero, really good addition. Marco Maric should be an upgrade at goalkeeper, but you've got those questions looming over Albert Ellis and Mauro Manotas potentially going the other way. So I want to wait and see a little bit on Houston first.
That's why I wanted to throw that one out there. I mean, I agree with you on Columbus. I agree with you on Cincinnati. And yeah, you're 5 for 4. I'm right there with you. I look at somebody like the Galaxy, and I still have questions. You bring in Katai, which I thought was great. You bring in Insua, which for me is that's another interesting one. But you also bring in Sasha Kljestan, and with a porous defense, you bring in somebody with a fantastic mustache, but who's on the back end of the bell curve. I still have more questions.
No. You can throw shade wherever you want, but that one's not fair because Sasha Kljestan coming in has nothing to do with LA's defense. 0. And I don't think he really has anything to do with the Galaxy in a major way anyway. He's not going to be a 34-game starter. He's probably going to come off the bench. He's probably going to be, a spot starter, attacking sub. Doesn't change anything about the defense. Not at all.
And so you've got Insua and Danilo Acosta. And so I still have more questions about the Galaxy than I do answers.
Why are you shading Insua and Danilo Acosta on the left side? Those are upgrades.
I'm not shading.
Yeah, no, you just did. You absolutely did. But those are big upgrades. Insua's coming from Stuttgart. That's better than what they've had on the back line, period. So
I'm still, when it comes to integration, for me, that's the biggest thing. And I know that we still have another month of training.
You could say that about every edition, though.
Right. But when you have a defense that was as porous as the Galaxy's was last year, that's why until I see how everything integrates with everybody who's coming in new, I'm still going to have concerns about a team like the Galaxy, even though
you're talking about something completely different.
Okay.
Every move has questions. None of these moves, saying a team had the best offseason or the worst offseason, doesn't mean they're an MLS Cup contender or they have no opportunity to win it. These are just moves. These are moves on paper. So integration has zero to do with it. Emiliano Insua is an upgrade over Didier Traore. Period. There's no question about that. You're talking about a player with a lot of experience around the world versus a teenager. It's an upgrade. It's a good move on paper. Doesn't mean he's going to be the best left back in the league. Doesn't mean he's going to make that defense better by himself. But on paper, that's a good move. And Danilo Acosta has more experience than Didier Traore. That was your left back option. So I think the Galaxy have done well so far. I by no means put them on worst offseason. I'm not putting them in best offseason just yet, although if they sign Chicharito, they might be in that.
Yes.
Because you're talking about a transformational player on and off the field. And you add Chicharito to a team that will probably have some combination of Katai, Pavone, Leggett leading the attack. Pretty good. Pretty good. A young Efrain Alvarez taking more minutes, a veteran like Sasha Kljestan coming off the bench. It's a great attack. Chicharito would score a boatload of goals, but defensively, they're better. They're not great, but they're better. Far better than they were because you've added an experienced player in Insua, another young American player in Acosta. They can still make other moves, and I think they're going to need to, but on paper, they're much closer to the best offseason side than the worst.
Where would you put them in the West right now, as things stand?
Now, see, these are different conversations, and this is what I want to make clear. Cincinnati's had one of the best off seasons in the league. I don't think they're close to winning the conference. I think they had a really good off season. They needed to. I think Columbus has had a great off season. I don't put them at the top of the East. Orlando's had a great off season. I don't know if they make the playoffs. Two completely different conversations. Seattle's had an awful off season. I'm not saying they're going to miss the playoffs. So those are two different things. It's a lot harder to pick contenders and such right now, but this is what you do, and you start to look at it overall, which is taking the next step from what's coming in on paper or what teams are losing on paper, how you think it could play out. In terms of the Galaxy, I've got them just outside of the Cup contenders. I've got 6 teams that right now I think are the favorites to win MLS Cup. 3 in the East, 3 in the West. It's Atlanta, New York, Toronto in the East.
Mm-hmm.
Sporting, Portland, and LAFC in the West. Not in any order.
Okay.
I think those are the top 6 teams in the league. And I've got LA and Seattle just outside of it because I think Seattle will make moves, and you're the defending champs, and their attack is outstanding. And I think the Galaxy right now are at least more likely to get Chicharito than not. And what they've added around it, and if you don't get Chicharito, I think they're going to go out and spend crazy money on a number 9. They're going to have somebody to replace Zlatan. They're going to be a contender. I think they're going to be in that mix, but just outside of the top 3 in each conference. Right now, it's LAFC, Portland, and Sporting as the top 3 teams in the West for me.
Yep. No, I definitely could see that as the top 3 from that perspective. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you.
I mean, it's just a different conversation. I think Sporting with Pulido can put you into that conversation, and they've got to stay healthy, which you would expect would happen. I don't think they're going to have the injuries they had last time around. Portland, if Jimmy Chara can come in and give them something that they haven't had, they've got other moves out there that they're trying to get done as well. Portland can be a team that can get back into that conversation. I think they should get back into that conversation. And LAFC is LAFC. You know, they've made good moves in the offseason. I think LAFC hasn't made any of the moves that'll blow you away right now, but you're talking about a team that's added 2 young central midfielders in Francisco Janela and Jose Cifuentes. That deal was announced yesterday. Makes your team overall better. You know, you can manage losing a Diego Rossi if that deal happens because you've added Brian Rodriguez last summer. You know, they added 2 players in Rodriguez and Palacios last summer with the idea to them taking on bigger roles in 2020. So some of their big additions for 2020 have already been in the team. That's big. That's really big. LAFC should be one of the best teams in the league this year.
Yep.
Can they make that next step to winning a title? Because that's something different. You can be one of the best teams, period. You can have a great regular season, period. But are you a champion? That's a different conversation in a league that has playoffs, because it's a related skill set, but it's a different skill set. You know, we've seen teams in leagues in all kinds of sports that have been great regular season teams, but when those lights get a little bit brighter in the postseason, they don't look quite as good. LAFC has been that so far. Their Champions League opportunity here to start the season could change that narrative a bit. They get Club Leon straight out of the gates. If they take care of business and they look good doing it, I think we're going to have some different thoughts about LAFC handling pressure.
And when you have, when you have these early season tests like CONCACAF Champions League, you know, it shows who you can be. And so I think that having that alarm go off early on in the year to sit there and figure out, okay, what can we be? You take care of Leon, then I think you prove to yourself just as much as you prove to everybody else on the outside what you can be as a team. And so I think that, I think that LAFC, if they come out on top with Leon, I think that there's a reason for self-optimism, I guess is the best way to put it. But Seattle has Olympia in Champions League, right?
Yeah.
For me, I look at Olympia as a team that could come up and bite you. And
no, absolutely. I mean, but again, now we're talking about a different topic. Seattle would be the other way. Seattle, yeah, they have a team in Olympia that's not as strong as Club Leon. Let's not get it twisted. But could Olympia pull an upset? Yeah, I think Olympia is a strong team. They were the team that I didn't want to see out of Honduras. Motagua was the weaker team of the two. So Olympia can upset Seattle. That's why Seattle's got to get some moves done. But Seattle has also shown in postseason after postseason after postseason that they can handle those situations. So they're the exact opposite of LAFC, because LAFC has a stronger roster, especially right now. They have been a better team in the regular season over the 2 years they've existed. Seattle's got a trophy, and Seattle went into LAFC's house and beat them on the road to that trophy.
Mm-hmm.
Seattle's a team that you think has that constitution to handle these situations. LAFC still has to prove it.
But and once again, this is just looking at a piece of paper right now, but with the moves that Seattle has not done.
Sure.
Getting
but
into,
you can't talk out of both sides. You can't say, well, LAFC hasn't handled the pressure, so I question them, and Seattle doesn't have the team, so I question them, because the reverse is true for both. Is Seattle going to go into the season not making any moves? No, of course not. Let's not be silly here. LAFC has to show, no matter who they put on the roster, that they can win those big games. They're going to get
Right.
2 straight out of the gate. Seattle is getting a lesser opponent. They need to make moves. We know that. They know that. They're going to. Hopefully they're going to make them soon so you get guys, as ready as you can be for Olympia. But that's an opponent that you should be able to get through, not at full strength. Olympia and Club Leon, you're talking about 2 different worlds. Olympia is a challenge, and if you're not prepared for it mentally and on paper, on your roster, you're going to struggle more than you should. But Seattle has shown the ability to handle moments of pressure. You just haven't seen that out of LAFC. So you can't use the same argument to diminish both, is what I'm saying. You can't flip it. Who do you think is at more risk of getting knocked out in the round of 16 in CONCACAF? Seattle or LAFC?
Seattle.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, once again, I'm looking at it right now.
Well, no, I'm asking who's at more risk of getting knocked out, period. I mean, today if they played, even then I think Seattle would still be at less risk, but who's at more risk of getting knocked out, period?
Well, for me, it's the team that plays the Liga MX side.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. even with Seattle dealing with guys coming in later than they would like, I think Seattle's training camp opens today. They've got a lot of work to do. Garth Lagerwey has had reasons why it hasn't gotten done. Those reasons are going to have to go away. You're going to have to sign some defenders. Even with that, LAFC is playing one of the top teams out of Mexico over the last couple of years, and Seattle is playing a top team out of Honduras. Those are 2 different worlds. So it's always LAFC that's going to be at more risk of getting knocked out in the round of 16. It has nothing to do with LAFC and Seattle's comparisons roster to roster. It has to do with the opponent. That's an easy one.
Yeah, for me, I'm always looking at the team that is playing the Liga MX side in the opening round as, that 5-12 or 8-9 that you would think of when it comes to the March college basketball tournament. And it's 2 teams that are pretty close that you have in that matchup for me, but that's always leaning to the Liga MX side.
It has to. I mean, Seattle is going to have to make some moves. I think they will. I think the posturing's been a little silly. I'm not expecting them to go into the year looking like this, but you're just talking about a different world of an opponent. There could easily be an upset, whether it's a Liga MX team or an MLS team losing to a Central American team, a Caribbean team. It can happen because it's soccer. Anything can happen over 90/180 minutes. But the only one that drew somebody you did not want to see was LAFC. They drew Club Leon. They drew the difficult opponent out of the other pot, and they've got to deal with it. So they're the ones that are easily at more risk of getting knocked out there. But I still think they're more of an MLS Cup contender than Seattle. Seattle just has work to do for the season. And until they do it, I can't put them as one of the top teams in the West. I think Sporting is better. I think Portland is better. And I think LAFC in the regular season is easily better. LAFC is a little unique in this conversation because of that lack of success in big moments. This is not the, can they get into the playoffs? Can they get a good seed? They've had those things, and they haven't been able to get it done. It's, can they handle pressure? Their only pressure win so far is over the Galaxy, who was an inferior opponent, but was in their heads in the playoffs. That's it. They're 1-2 in the playoffs in their lifetime. And they were the favorite in all 3 matches. That's an issue. And that's something that they're going to have to show has changed. Because if they get knocked out, even though they have the tougher draw, even though you could... I don't even think it's a toss-up, honestly. I think LAFC is the favorite over Club Leon, but not by much at all. But if they get knocked out there, that drumbeat of can't handle pressure, can't handle pressure, can't handle pressure. It's only going to continue. It's only going to continue until they give you a reason to think otherwise. They have that opportunity in CONCACAF. It's a tough opponent, but it also gives them the ability to change the narrative about who they are very quickly and change the perception of what 2020 and MLS is going to be all about.
Shiva actually has an LAFC question this morning.
Okay.
She says, LAFC's been really active in the offseason. Don't you think they've added how many young players now? And how are they fitting the salaries in without much movement out?
Well, they've only added 2. I mean, again, it's easy to get overwhelmed by rumor and talk and perception, but they've only added 2. And they just added 1 yesterday. So they've added Francisco Janela, Jose Cifuentes. They added 2 guys last season in the summer because they had that room. You know, let's take a look at their salary situation from last year to get an idea about this. Pull that up because I think they've managed their cap really, really well. Let me see how they are put in here. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's go from the top. Carlos Vela, designated player, $6.3 million, guaranteed compensation. Duh. Your next 2 in terms of guaranteed compensation, Diego Rossi, just over $1 million. Brian Rodriguez, just over $1 million. Both are or have been young designated players. So that helps you with your cap in a big way. You were able to offload Andre Horta when that didn't work out and add Brian Rodriguez instead. And I think that helped you cap-wise ultimately because Rodriguez was younger and gave you less of a hit because he's the super young designated player hit where it's $150,000 on the cap, if I remember correctly. So Rossi and Rodriguez, designated players, but small cap hit. Adama Diomande is next, $935,000 a year guaranteed compensation. You're using TAM to bring that down. Walker Zimmerman just over the top amount, $600,000. So you're going to have to use some allocation money to bring him down under the limit, but not by much. And then you start to look at these salaries, and this is a credit to LAFC's front office. Lee Win was on the maximum, so you could have either allocation moneyed him down or left it and left that cap hit if you had the room. Edward Atuesta, guaranteed compensation, $493,000. Don't know what kind of acquisition fee you had to pay for him, but you probably had to use some allocation money on him. Probably not a ton because I don't think it was a big, transfer fee to bring him in. Diego Palacios, guaranteed compensation's low, $348,000. The transfer fee was higher, so you're going to have to use TAM money to bring him down. Okay. Beitashour was a veteran, just under $300,000. Eddie Segura, $223,000. Mohamed El Munir, $208,000. Danilo Silva, $200,000. So you look at the number of players over that maximum threshold. Vela, designated player, good. Rossi, young designated player. Brian Rodriguez, young designated player. Adama Diomande, allocation money. Walker Zimmerman, little bit of allocation money. Lee Win, depends on if you need to use allocation money. Atuesta, probably using some allocation money. Maybe not, depending on the transfer fee. Diego Palacios, I would expect they've had to use some allocation money. That's it. So that's how they're able to add these guys because they're really not in any kind of big salary situation. They've spent some big transfer fees, but they're on guys that are either young designated players, so the cap hit is low, or it's on a guy like Vela who you're going to pay anyway, and you're just handling that, and the cap hit is the cap hit. It just is what it is. So LAFC's constructed their roster really, really well, and you start to look down the road, they move Rossi, which has been rumored, although it's been pretty quiet in this window, which has been surprising. If you move Rossi, you're going to have a designated player spot open up, and you're going to have a lot of money to work with to replace that designated player. Money coming in for a designated player can go back out to another designated player, and all's the same. Where it gets weird is when you bring in a good transfer fee on a non-designated player because it doesn't allow you to go get another designated player. That's the silliness with some of the MLS rules. That's where it gets a little confusing. It's sometimes harder to make those moves. Selling a designated player and adding another one, that's easy. That's easy business. LAFC's in a really good spot. They've managed their cap well. They've managed their acquisitions well. They've hit on most, and the one they missed on in Andre Horta, they did good business to move him on, take a loss, but bring in a young designated player in Brian Rodriguez at the right time. Because if you tried to get him now, you'd be paying a lot more money. Because he's already getting European offers. And he's barely played for you. So you're in a position to make money on him today if you wanted to. But I think they want to move Rossi first and keep Rodriguez for a year, then make that move. They've handled it really well. I think they took what Atlanta showed them in terms of bringing in young players and then being prepared to move them on, and have maybe even accentuated it a little bit. And they've hit on their other signings. It's the only question for them. You know, you compare the first 2 years of LAFC to the first 2 years of Atlanta United. It's very similar. LAFC's been slightly better in terms of points in the regular season, but they don't have an MLS Cup. Atlanta did. So that's the question about LAFC. Can they now get over that hurdle and be really good in the regular season and win the trophy at the end?
For me, when it comes to LAFC, the questions that I've had over the last 2 seasons have to do with experienced depth and the reliance of Bob Bradley to run out the same pretty much starting 11, 12, 13 guys. And then when you need to bring in a deeper depth piece off the bench, it's a younger player who really hasn't had a whole lot of reps. And so for me, one of the things that I've always looked at for LAFC is that experienced depth on the bench for them when it comes to the things that we talk about when it comes to schedule and playoffs and injuries and such.
It's hard to do both. It's hard to be able to have this good of a roster and have more depth. I don't have a problem with playing young players. That's not the issue for me. It's been that some of these players haven't looked the same in those pressure moments. That's more of the issue for me. I don't think it's an overuse situation. Let's look at that. So last season, Rossi started 33 matches. Segura started 33 matches in the back. Vela started 31. Atuesta started 30. Blessing started 29. Harvey 28. K 27. Zimmerman 25. He had a concussion during the season.
Right.
Beitashour 24. Nobody else more than 20. So I think he actually did try to rotate it a little bit more last year from a starting perspective. He's worked Tristan Blackman into a role where Blackman could end up being the starting right back this season. That's really good development by Bradley. Diamande started 15 matches last year. He had the situation at the end of the season where he missed time. Yep. That factors into it. But you've been able to do some different things up top with Vela sliding in as a 9. I don't think it's as effective, but against some opponents, it could be a better route. You traded Christian Ramirez. You've moved on from Lee Win. Brian Rodriguez started 5 times last year. That number is going to go up. You know, it's okay. I think they've went more top-heavy towards the starting 11, and it's paid off with good regular season results. I think it's a little hard to throw too much shade at LAFC and what they've done in 2 years. You're talking about the best first 2 years in league history. That's pretty good. The hardest thing for them is that Atlanta won a title in League 2, or in Season 2. and LAFC was positioned to and didn't. That's the thing that hurts it, because if that didn't exist, nobody'd be saying anything about LAFC. It'd be, oh, they're great. This is wonderful. This is great. They're going to make the next step. You know they're going to make the next step. It's all good. The only reason that shade is hanging over them is Atlanta did what LAFC has done starting a year earlier, and they have an MLS Cup to show for it in those first 2 years. LAFC doesn't. I don't think you can really criticize what John Thorrington and Bob Bradley have done too much.
No, when you look at what they do on the field, I mean, it is the
off the field too.
Well, and when you look at on the field, hold
on.
Okay, all right.
They've positioned themselves to make a boatload of money on Diego Rossi.
Yep.
They've added a player in Brian Rodriguez that reportedly has seen 8-figure transfer rumors already. They've positioned themselves, period. I don't think it's anything about just on the field.
Well, no, I was just taking it a piece at a time. When you see what they do, when you see what they do on the field, I mean, at times it is a thing of beauty. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it, but when the field tilts and you see just them coming at you in waves and waves and waves. I mean, it is beautiful to watch. And they really set themselves up to be an offensive juggernaut. And doing that in this short period of time, once again, they sat there and they said, all right, we're going to be competitive from jump, and we bring in these players, and you're doing absolutely that. But yeah, that specter that's hanging over LAFC is right now winning in the big moment. And that's that stumbling block of theirs. So that's what everybody's going to be looking at. That's what everybody's going to be talking about. That's what everybody's going to be mentioning until LAFC gets over that proverbial hump. And it's always going to be a talking point when you're talking about LAFC.
Just an offensive juggernaut.
That's well. like I said, I look at shiny objects. For me, the fact that they've scored all these goals and the goal difference is what it was and all that kind of stuff. For me,
there's two things that go into the goal difference, though. And that's the point I'm trying to make.
You got to have defense that keeps the ball from going into the net, obviously.
How many teams conceded fewer goals than LAFC last year?
How many?
No, guess. How many? How many do you think?
I'm guessing either 0 or 1.
None.
Okay.
Nobody conceded less goals than LAFC. And part of that is because of the way that they play in the attack. It's not always, defense is not always sit back and defend and you can't have an attack to go along with it. Sometimes you defend by attacking. That's something we've seen out of Pep Guardiola teams. It's something we've seen out of a lot of teams. Bob Bradley's doing that. And look, I'm not going to sit here and argue with a team that won 21 games, only lost 4, had a goal difference that's the best in league history of plus 48, scored 85 goals, conceded the least in the league. I can't really argue too much with it. They need to be better in big moments, absolutely.
Yes.
That's a problem, but that's not the problem that I think a lot of people try to make it out to be. It'll be a problem once you get to the playoffs. It's going to be a talking point going into the series with Club Leon, but you're also talking about the best start of a team in MLS history. Best 2 seasons, period. In regular season, they got more points than Atlanta did. They've got more points than anybody else. If Atlanta hadn't won 2018 MLS Cup, there would be 0 shade at LAFC. The main reason why is that comparison. Yep, you had more points in the regular season, but you don't have a trophy. You have a supporter shield, and they're going to point to that, and they should point to that, because that's an accomplishment. It's not the accomplishment. I think it's really hard to throw much criticism LAFC's way. Year 3, with a supporter shield in the case, with records in the case, now you've got to show, whether it's Champions League, MLS Cup, that you can take that step up and win in those big moments. because they've won a lot of games, but not enough in pressure situations. And that's going to be the question for Bob Bradley. I don't think it's as much about, depth and rotation and too much attack and those kinds of things. I think it's just honestly down to handling moments and being better in those moments. And does that mean Bradley has to change his approach a little bit? I think it could. Does it mean they need to find, maybe a little bit different personality, whether with an addition, and maybe Cifuentes, Janela end up being that? I think Cifuentes is more likely to be that than Janela. Maybe that gives you that little bit of steel that you need. We'll see. Because that's the challenge for LAFC right now, because the main reason they're getting criticized is the two new glamour clubs in the league. One has an MLS Cup and one has a Supporter Shield. And one of those trophies is more important than the other. And some people don't like that, but that's the case. That's the situation in this league. Let's take a quick break. Let's reset for hour number 2. We'll get more Tuesday thoughts from you guys on Twitter at SoccerDown here. We'll get into players, managers that have the most pressure on them going into 2020. Let us know what you think on Twitter at SoccerDown here. We'll be right back.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here, January 14th, Tuesday Thoughts edition of the show. You guys have had thoughts in hour number 1. Let's get to those right about now.
Okay. A couple of folks wanted to know about Barco and why he was not at training yesterday.
I have not seen the note from his parents or doctor, but I'm assuming it was an excused absence, and I believe his Instagram story had him traveling to the United States last night or early this morning, so he's on his way. I think everything is good.
And the other comment from Mike Rooney, when will United announce Bruno Fernandes? Oh, wait, wrong channel. Chances Barco remains the full season and gets MVP after going goal for goal with the King, as well as leading the league in assists.
Well, if he does that, he's going to command a lot of money in a transfer fee. That's a bit optimistic. I think Barco has a good likelihood of being here for the whole season. I'm not going to put a percentage on it. I think it's a good likelihood because I think the Olympics makes it a little complicated for clubs that might want to bring him in Europe. You know, he's going to be away with the Olympic team because you would expect that Argentina qualifies. Stranger things have happened, but two teams out of Brazil or two teams out of South America qualify. You would think Brazil and Argentina are the top two. We'll see what happens in the tournament. If they do, then Barco's going to go play in that. And it was something that was talked about yesterday in interviews after training. You know, you've got Barco, Miles Robinson, potentially others who could be away with the Olympics later this season. And it's something the club's going to have to deal with. Could that be maybe a reason why a team doesn't throw $30, $40 million at Atlanta United this summer? Potentially. But if he starts the season as good as he started last season, if he plays like he did at the U20 World Cup, if he's scoring goals and having assists, then you're talking about a guy who's going to be in demand. And generally, in non-Olympic years, those players go more in the summer, a younger player like Barco, because a big club in Europe would want them in preseason and help them adjust. I think there's still an adjustment period. You know, maybe it's a little bit less coming to MLS from Argentina as opposed to going straight over, because you're playing in a league with a lot of travel. You're playing in a league in front of big crowds like you would in some games in Argentina, but maybe not all. You're playing in a high profile, competition. Maybe it's looked at a little different. I don't think it's completely gotten there yet. So I think clubs would rather bring a young player in like a Barco in summer as opposed to the winter window. So this summer is going to be interesting. I just wonder if the Olympics complicates it. And that's what we'll have to wait and see. If Barco has the year that I think he was on pace to have last year, before the kicks in the crew match and Open Cup, if he's able to have the year that he was on pace to have, he's going to attract a lot of attention, and he's going to attract large transfer offers. And as we've always said, there's a number out there. Whatever it is, there's a number that is going to be too good to say no to. Does that happen in the summer? It could. It could. I think he's going to be here the whole year, though, and I think he's going to go after the 2020 season. But without the season even starting, we're all taking guesses.
Stunner's in this morning. And he says that he knows that you have argued Emerson Hyndman is a sufficient Nagbe position replacement, but Frank de Boer's own words give me the distinct impression a gap at that spot remains.
Okay. I never claimed to know everything. So I think Hyndman's part of replacing Nagbe. I think that's why they brought him in. I don't know if it's going to be a one person replaces Nagbe situation, and I think if they go get the player that's been mentioned and Matias Villasanti, if they're able to add him, it's a great addition. And it might be a committee approach to replacing Nagbe. You might be playing the midfield differently that maybe Nagbe wouldn't have fit into if you'd made those changes. That's why I don't know if it's as simple as a like for like. I think it's more of a conversation of like for like when it comes to LGP and replacing him with Fernando Meza than Nagbe, because the midfield's so fluid and you can change the way it looks with different shapes, with different personnel, and you can look different but be more effective. I don't know if that's going to happen here. I think Hyndman's obviously part of the replacement of a Nagbe, because if we're going to play that game, then what did he replace? Why was he brought in? Is it just to replace empty space? Was it to replace, was it to replace Eric Remedi? I think Hyndman's more similar to Nagbe than he is to Remedi, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I think you can still look to get better. Even if Hyndman's part of that conversation, Villasanti would be a great addition and would give you even more flexibility in the midfield than you currently have. So I think you're always looking to get better. And if you're looking to upgrade there, it's going to be part of replacing Nagbe for sure. But I don't think it's a like for like. I don't think anything is a 1-for-1 in that kind of role. I just don't.
Since you mentioned Meza, let's go to what Tafka has brought in this morning. And Tafka tried to think through the Meza transaction involving the Coxa, Xolos, Atlanta MLS, and the player.
Did he get a headache?
It's there's a lot of arrows. I mean, it is like John Madden on the telestrator. That's what this looks like. He says, love to know what y'all thought of his theory regarding the Meza transfer. The specific numbers are shrug shoulders emoji, though salary is clearly over the TAM threshold, $530,000 plus, but it makes sense to him.
There's no way to know. Without knowing numbers, there's no way to know why it went down the way it did. I think there's definitely obvious speculation as to how it would benefit Atlanta if the player came from Tijuana in the deal with LGP, and it was not reported that way by the club. So they were announced as separate deals. Doesn't mean they're not linked, doesn't mean they aren't part of the same deal, but that's how they were announced. If they were part of the same deal, yeah, I think, we can all put our tinfoil hat on and fly the black helicopter in and start to see how, this would make a lot of sense. But there's no way to know without knowing the dollar figures. There's just no way to know how this whole deal goes down, period. So I don't know if we're ever going to truly get that answer. The biggest, I guess, domino that might help explain it would be if anything comes out on the Mexico side about the move of Meza going from Necaxa to Tijuana and being registered by Tijuana, which meant that they could make the transfer of him going to Atlanta. Why did that happen? Was there something behind that? Was it a gentleman's handshake? Was it part of the Pacto de Caballeros, which is something that you want to read up on with rules in Liga MX? Go for it, because they've reportedly gotten that unwritten rule out of the way the league operates, but it's an unwritten rule. So how much can you really get an unwritten rule out of there? I don't know. These things are complicated. I don't know. I thought it was very interesting the way everything shook out. I can definitely see why people would get the conspiracy theories out. And I believe that it would help if they're related in the same deal in terms of cap hits and such. But there's no way to definitively know. There just isn't until numbers are reported, and they haven't been. So there's really no way to know how this went down.
The end of hour number one, you had a tease.
I did.
When it came, yes, in discussing content for hour number two, presenting the question of what coach has the most to prove/do for 2020. Kelly Francis, who last time I checked interviews people,
I heard
has
that,
chimed in with her answer for that.
Okay, let's start with that.
She says, if that is not, in all caps, Oscar Pareja, you're wrong. Orlando is going to be one to watch this year, whether #ATLUTD, folks like it or not. #Tuesday Thoughts.
Yeah, but I don't think there's pressure on Pareja in 2020 to deliver. I think it's a long-term project. So I agree. I think Orlando, I think they're borderline a playoff team. If they get some of the deals they're trying to get over the line done, I think they are a playoff team. Now, they've got to actually earn the spot, but on paper, I think they will be one of those teams. They're linked right now to a winger, Alex Castro, 25 years old, played for Deportivo Tolima in the last campaign, but it appears that his rights are owned by Deportivo Cali in Colombia. Castro was quoted by AS as saying he wants to go to Orlando. Oscar Pareja knows him. Reportedly, the offer is $1.5 million for 80% of his pass. That's another addition for Orlando to go with Junior Urso, who was announced yesterday, to go with Antonio Carlos, Rodrigo Schlegel, to go with Andres Perea. Their lineup could look like, now forward right now it's still Dwyer. I think unless another opportunity pops up, that's what it's going to be. Can he get back to what he was before? I think he's going to have more talent around him, so potentially. But I think your lineup could look like, Brian Rowe in goal, good goalkeeper. Joao Moutinho at left back, I think they could upgrade. Robin Janssen, Antonio Carlos as your two center backs. You have Kamal Miller, you have Rodrigo Schlegel, you have Alex Dijon. You have a lot of depth at center back. Maybe Miller could slide over and play left back for you. We've seen that happen a little bit. You've got Juan on the right side. You've got Kyle Smith as a reserve. Juan is a dangerous player going forward. Central midfield, you're going to have some combination of Sebastian Mendez, Andres Perea, Junior Urso, Uri Rosell. It's a lot of talent. You're going to have wingers like Nani, Chris Mueller, potentially Alex Castro. You're going to have a number 10 like Mauricio Pereira from day one. And you're going to have Dom Dwyer pushed by Tesho Akindele, Benji Michel, Santiago Patino, and maybe the Generation Adidas signing that they drafted, Daryl Dike. Maybe. I think he's probably going to play mostly with OCB, but he's got the talent. So that's a pretty good squad, and there's pretty good depth in it. Still some areas you can upgrade, but that's a team that's borderline playoff level. I don't think Orlando is going into this saying playoffs are bust, and that's more of where I'm putting pressure on people. I think pressure on people is going into a year where you have to deliver. If Orlando finishes 8th or 9th in the East, I don't think that costs Pareja's job. I think Pareja and Luis Muzzi are building something for the long haul. Now, does he need to get in the playoffs in his first 2 years? Yeah, I think so. I think that's a fair level of expectation. But I wouldn't put him on my list for most pressure. I think most pressure, I'm looking at Ben Olsen, Chris Armas, Giovanni Savarese, and Mark Dos Santos on the managerial side. Those are the four that popped into mind first. Olsen has been in D.C. for a long time. He has made the most of bad rosters many times. He's also had some really bad seasons in the mix, too. I don't think it's all his fault, but I think at some point you're going to have to consider making a move there. I think if you give him the talent, Olsen can do just fine. But are you going to give him more talent than he's been given? And if you're not, maybe you want to go in a different direction. Maybe you want to go to somebody who's stronger at developing talent. Maybe you want to go in a different direction. But Olsen's been there so long that I think that adds a little bit to the pressure on him. Chris Armas, again, I don't think it's all his fault. I don't think he's been given the talent that he should have been. I think they've lost even more talent going into this year. But Red Bulls is the club that has expectation. And if he can't overcome that talent gap by developing players, by leaning into the system that they play, I don't think he's long for that job. Savarese took Portland to MLS Cup in year 1. Last year was baffling at times. Last year, the way they finished was baffling. That puts some pressure on Savarese because Portland's a team that expects to be winning titles. And if they're not in that top 3 in the West, where I think they can be, I think that seat gets a little warm. And I put Dos Santos on it because I think the expectations will be more with Vancouver. I thought they were bad last year. They didn't look like a well-coached team at times. Now, they didn't have a ton of talent, but I don't think they got the most out of the talent they had. Now you've added Cavallini. You've got a goal scorer. Are you going to be better? If it's the same kind of season, I think Vancouver starts to look a lot like Chicago under Veljko Paunovic, where it just doesn't ever change. And you've got to wonder if that seat gets hot. I think the next level are guys with top teams that always have pressure. Frank DeBoer's in that conversation. Ronnie Dyla's going to be in that conversation, even in year one. Peter Vermes is in that conversation because there were people beating the drum about Vermes being at fault for last year. I don't think he was. But if they have another year where they don't make the playoffs, yeah, he's going to have pressure. I think Guillermo Barros Escaloto's in this conversation because he's there to win. And last year, they didn't look like a winning team. If they go get Chicharito, the expectation's going to be MLS Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Fair or unfair, that's going to be the expectation. And if they don't get it, seat gets hot. So I think those are two different groups. You have a group that I think coming into the year has pressure, and you have a group that are in pressure-packed jobs that are always going to have a level of pressure that if things don't go well, you're going to have increased pressure. You know, that's just a given with being in Atlanta, being at New York City, being at Sporting with the level of excellence they've had, and being at the LA Galaxy. You're always going to have pressure.
I was going to ask you what you thought about Dyla, and then you put him into the major market category.
Yeah, there's got to be some pressure on him. I mean, I think it's going to be hard for him to match what Dome Tarrant did. I think Tarrant, when all is said and done in 5-6 years down the road, he's going to be far more fondly remembered than he was when his time came to an end. He did a great job. He elevated that club. They were better under Tarrant than they were under Patrick Vieira. Now, maybe he wasn't the personality that Vieira was. Maybe he didn't evoke the same type of feeling that Vieira did. But I think he did a better job. Can Ronnie Dyla match that or surpass that? Well, if you get to an Eastern Conference final, you've surpassed it. And you've taken that club somewhere that they've never been. They brought everybody back from a very good team. So he's got all the resources. You know, it's year one for him. You could see a bit of a slip, especially when you look at Atlanta and Toronto and then feeling pressure from Columbus, from New England in the Eastern Conference, from Philadelphia as well. Could you see a slip? Yeah. But I think there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on what kind of job Ronnie Dyla does with NYC. Because there would be for any team that is coming off of an Eastern Conference regular season title, but got knocked out in the conference semifinals the way they did.
Chris Hutchison agrees with your assessment, thinking that Atlanta United's coaching and management have something to prove this year, given the changes still occurring as we enter training camp.
I think in Atlanta, after year one with Tata Martino, there's going to be pressure every year. I think you take that job knowing there's going to be pressure. You know, nothing has changed. I don't think there's increased pressure because of the way last year went. I think that you're looking at the same level of pressure that just Atlanta will always have.
Yeah, the expectation level.
Yeah, and that's to be expected. We have a little bit of this. So, Doug Robertson over at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution with an update on something we talked about in hour number one. Edgar Castillo, along with Adam John, are training with Atlanta United with the intention of signing, is what Doug writes. Nothing has been finalized. So, a little bit more on Castillo. We've talked about it. Depth on the left, international experience in Champions League. What he's done in MLS, but also with his time playing for the U.S. men's national team and playing in Mexico. He's played for Santos, he's played for Club America, he's played for Tijuana, he's played for Tigres, 2 Liga MX titles. Adam John is a big striker, more of a hold-up player, more of a target striker. Came up through Columbus. He converted the penalty in the shootout in 2017 that knocked Atlanta out of the postseason. He's played in the USL Championship. Big body, good on set pieces, good on crosses. Very different kind of forward than Joseph Martinez, Tito Villalba. But a guy who's been around the block and a guy who's been in MLS. Another veteran, hard-working kind of guy. I kind of put him in that I think he's a little bit better player, but Devin Sandoval. And when Sandoval came into Atlanta United 2 in their first season, he was expected to bring that leadership, that hard work and training day in and day out, push players, but also give you something different. You didn't have another forward like that in that team. John, higher level, but that kind of presence. A guy who's going to come in and make you work in training. A guy who's scored goals at the USL Championship level, 17 goals for Phoenix Rising last season. A guy who is talented, but a very different kind of player. A very different kind of player than what you have. He started his career with San Jose, 6 goals in 62 matches, 6 goals in 41 matches for Columbus. Not a big goal scorer, more at USL Championship. But if he's being brought in from Phoenix Rising last season, and I don't know if he's still under contract there, and you'd have to work out some kind of a fee, you're not going to be on a big salary. You've got some spots like that to work with. I get it. I think Castillo would be in the same boat, too. I don't think he's going to be in on a big salary. I don't think he's going to be able to command that at this point in his career. But I think he's another player that makes you a better overall squad. So they're training. Doug reports that there is an intention of signing. Nothing's been signed yet. So there's your update.
Other guys that I had on my coaching short list, I had Bob Bradley on it, obviously, because of what we were discussing from hour number 1. I don't think that they're going to get rid of him if things don't get to where they want to go, but I think that there is pressure on Bradley.
Whoa. It depends on how you want to define it and play with it. Yes, there's pressure on Bob Bradley. There's pressure to lift MLS Cup because LAFC is one of those clubs. I don't put Bradley in this conversation because he's built that club from day one. I think that gives him a longer leash.
Right.
He has done things in the regular season that no team's ever done. I think that gives him a longer leash. I don't think this is a year where he's going to find a hot seat.
No.
I don't. I think if they, let's say LAFC gets 60 points, finishes third in the West, loses in the conference semifinal, or gets to the conference final and loses that, I think he goes into 21 in this conversation. But yes. I don't think there's any way he's in this conversation in 2020. I don't.
No. Then there were 2 other guys that I had on my list for various reasons. I had Heath in Minnesota, and I also had Thierry Henry in Montreal, just because of Joey Saputo.
Heath signed a new deal, which I think gives him leeway. I don't think he's in this conversation in 2020. I think he could be in it in 21, and I think he probably will be, because I don't think Minnesota has as good of a year as they did last year. But he just signed a new deal, so I don't think that can put him in this conversation just yet. Minnesota is not a club that I think is going to sign somebody to a new deal and then eat that salary and move on. I just don't think they're going to do that. Thierry Henry, I don't even know if Montreal gets to a point where seats get hot. I think things just happen. So it's really hard to put them in this. I would like to think that coming in that Thierry Henry is going to have to develop, along with that team needing to develop. I don't think that team on paper is anywhere near competing in the Eastern Conference right now. Doesn't matter who's in charge. So I don't think he should be in this conversation. That doesn't mean Joey Saputo won't make a change, because Joey Saputo has been known to do those things. But I don't think going into the season, I would say Thierry Henry is fearing a hot seat or dealing with the pressure that these other guys are.
No, like I said, I just threw that in there because of Joey Saputo, who is known to do things in a knee-jerk fashion. If he's been out of shape about something, then he's going to pull a trigger, and it's just going to happen.
But that's not pressure.
True.
We're talking about who's feeling pressure. Like that.
So then what about...
That's getting off unexpectedly. You might not feel any pressure, and you might be out of a job. That's Joey Saputo. That's not these managers feeling pressure.
So then what about Jim Curtin in Philly?
Just signed a new deal. I think he's in the Adrian Heath conversation. I don't think he's feeling pressure in 2020, but if the year doesn't go well, he could be feeling it in 21.
I mean, to me, it just seems like Jim Curtin is perpetually under some kind of pressure to perform.
Signed a new deal. He signed a new deal. You're going back to last year. He signed a new deal. He earned that deal last year. He didn't sign another 1-year deal. That's an old story. Like he's got a contract now. I don't think he feels pressure in 2020. One, I don't think Philadelphia is going to be that bad for him to feel that kind of pressure. I think they're going to be a top 6 team in the East. I don't think they are as good as Toronto, New York, and Atlanta. No. Doesn't mean they can't finish ahead of one of them as they did last year. They finished ahead of Toronto. Toronto had a better playoff run. But I don't think they're as good as those. And I think now they're feeling it from Columbus, from New England. We'll see what DC does, potentially from Orlando. They're going to feel heat from the next tier. I think they're the top of the second tier. And I don't think that would put him in a pressure conversation or a hot seat conversation. It shouldn't in 2020. Let me put it that way. Ernst Tanner didn't want to commit to Jim Curtin straight out of the gate. Made him work for it. He did. He earned it. But he's got that contract now. Philly's another club that I don't expect to be signing guys to longer-term deals and then firing them and moving on rashly. They don't have the kind of budget for that. So I don't see him feeling pressure in 20. But if the year goes poorly, he could feel it in 21. Him and Adrian Heath are in very similar situations. I think Philly will be better than Minnesota this year.
Yeah. But no, I agree with you on Olsen in D.C. and Dyla for the big city element, Giro Barros Escaloto in L.A. for the major market thing, Armas because of how things have faded for the Red Bulls over the last couple of years. But yeah, a lot of your guys I definitely do agree with.
Oh, and sure, we'll use it.
I'm your huckleberry.
Ezequiel Barco is training this morning as well.
Tafka loves the Adam John possibility. 6'2" American citizenship contract expires with Phoenix in November. 29-year-old, which means he's going to be comfortable in a backup of situational role time with San Jose and the Crew.
I'm guessing Tafka's getting that contract situation from Transfermarkt. USL deals can be a little weird in these moments. He could have an MLS out clause, which is actually somewhat common. Guys sign a USL championship deal, but if an MLS team comes calling, they can get out of the deal without a transfer fee being paid. But there was also a story over at The Athletic that I think is a growing situation where you're seeing MLS clubs pay transfer fees for USL championship players. And it's a good thing. And they might be small fees. I mean, we're talking $10,000, $15,000. But that starts to build a market, and will start to go up. USL teams will see the opportunity. Hey, this guy who is 18 years old playing in Colombia or Ecuador, or name the country, it could be anywhere, and maybe they're not ready for an MLS deal just yet, but maybe they want to come to the United States and get in the shop window. You might be able to get them for a manageable fee for you, and then develop them and move them into MLS. That's a growing opportunity, and I think we'll see more of that. So John's a different conversation altogether. You're talking about a player who has been in MLS, made the decision to take a lower level, because USL Championship is, to guarantee more playing time And he produced, and he had a good year with Phoenix. Phoenix was a very good team in USL Championship. And now, maybe that gives him a pathway back into the first division. It happens. It happens a good bit where you see these types of moves where a player is borderline first division level. They would be more of a bench player in the first division. They decide to drop down, build their notoriety up a little bit, build their ability to command a little bit better salary up, get more playing time, and then make that move back up and maybe end up in a better situation than if they had signed a backup deal the year before. I think Adam John might end up doing that.
A couple of other things on the board this morning are actually going back to soccer, the hybrid show, Soccer Down Here over there last night. And one of them is the conversation that you had going back and forth with Thomas about Nick Alifi and the Bama player going off the bench. I missed this conversation. Where did this start?
No, it's not about that. It's about the red card and the foul in the Real Madrid Super Cup final by Fede Valverde that people in Madrid want to build him a statue for getting red carded because he committed the foul as a player's breaking away. It's 25 yards from goal, so it's not a penalty. It's a red card. Valverde will probably be suspended for a couple of games because Super Cup suspensions carry over into league play. But it prevented the breakaway. He took the red. It was late in extra time. Madrid won on penalties. So I think it's a great red card to take. I give Fede Valverde all the credit. I would build the statue too if I was a Madrid supporter in Madrid. I would be ready to contribute to building the statue. I would buy the man a drink, all the things. So Nick brought up, because Nick agreed, like Nick's on the same page. Of course, cynical defender Nick Alifi is going to be behind this kind of move. So he's agreeing, but he did mention the situation with, I believe it was talked about in the 30 for 30 about the Alabama-Auburn rivalry, about an Alabama player coming off the bench to tackle somebody. NCAA football rules, I guess, allow referees to award a touchdown for such a palpably unfair act. And I don't know if those quotes are from Thomas or from the NCAA football rules. I said there's no way to write a rule to allow that. I don't think there is. Anybody can write a rule, and any rule can pass. I don't think there's a fair way to write a rule to make that happen. I don't want to give the referee that ability. I don't want to make the referee have to deal with that pressure either, because you're going to get into some crazy situations where a referee is going to be feeling pressure to award a penalty for a foul 30 yards from goal.
Right.
Because, that feels really unfair. You can't referee based off feelings. A player coming off a bench versus a foul that happens in the course of a game, two different things. And Thomas and I were going back and forth trying to find some common ground on it. Thomas is lawyering here. He is, and he admits it. Hey, it's all good. The clear path rule in the NBA. I thought about that. Thomas brought it up too. I don't think it's the equivalent because points and free throws are so much less valuable than a penalty kick. Like it just, there's not a direct equivalent. So I don't think you can truly write a rule that would pass, that people would support, to say, well, in the final 5 minutes of regulation or the final 5 minutes of extra time, if a foul happens and a referee decides that it's really unfair, or this player has a clear path to goal or meets the equivalence of dog soap, but the foul is within 40 yards of the goal, like there's so many caveats that you have to add to it. I don't think you could get the law change passed by IFAB, by FIFA. I don't think it would be supported. I think it would add to more chaos. If people are going to fight about VAR and offside, oh my. People would fight about this. Because then any dog-so foul in a certain window of the game, people would be arguing for a penalty wherever it happens. I just don't think you can make the rule work that way. I think the punishment is fair. I don't think you can give a penalty here because there's so much unknown. What if, and we've all seen it, what if the player's breaking away? The player the defender says, I'm not going to make this foul here. I don't want to give up the penalty even though we're 30 yards from goal. And then what if the attacker puts the ball in the stands? What if the attacker trips over his own feet? What if the goalkeeper makes a save? I don't think you can say at that point it's a goal. It's not a goal. Goalkeepers make that save all the time. Attackers put that shot wide all the time. You can't take it to a penalty level. It's not a penalty. It's a foul 30 yards from goal, 25 yards from goal. It's outside the penalty area. That's not giving goalkeepers enough credit. That's not giving attackers enough of an opportunity to miss it. A penalty in that situation doesn't feel like the fair outcome for where that foul takes place. And that's where you have to make the decision, because nobody can say, well, he would have scored. You can't definitively say that. So you can't take it up a notch to a penalty that is scored 80% of the time. Because where that foul occurred, that's not a goal 80% of the time. No way it is. So I don't think you can make the rule fair. I don't think you could get enough support to get it passed. I think in this situation, the laws of the game are good and handled correctly. Players going to get suspended for a couple of games. Atletico Madrid had a free kick. They had about 5 minutes with a man advantage. It's on them that they couldn't take advantage of that, and it's on them that they lost the penalty shootout.
And the Colonel, after listening as well, he says he's disappointed to hear both you and Nick agree that cheating is okay if you win.
It's not cheating. That's not cheating. That's a foul. Cheating and committing a foul are not the same thing. So every time Leandro Gonzalez Perez gave up a free kick, he was cheating? No. Every time you miss on a tackle and trip somebody, you're cheating? I don't think so. That's what this was. This is even less of the foul/cheating conversation than the Luis Suarez one. The Luis Suarez one, you don't stick your hands up in that situation to defend normally. What if Valverde makes the lunging play and actually wins the ball? Didn't miss by that much.
No, it would have been a hell of a defensive play.
Then it's a great defensive play. It's not cheating. Cheating is different than committing a foul. They're not the same thing. It's not fair to put them in the same category. And yes, I would want my player to do that every single time.
Yeah, Colonel says it's certainly true in combat, but this is sports. It's incorrect on the links and for me between the touch lines.
I disagree, because this is nowhere near like golf cheating. Patrick Reed is not in this conversation with what he was caught doing, and then now he's threatening to sue commentators for talking about it. It's amazing. It's not in that conversation. It's not to me even in the conversation of Diego Maradona, hand of God. I mean, that's far more of a cheating conversation than this. And this is just, you got to do this. What's the difference between this being a smart play and a professional foul and taking a yellow card? I mean, it's a difference between a yellow and a red card, but in terms of cheating, what's the difference? Taking a yellow card and taking the professional foul, you're not trying to play the ball. You're not trying to do anything. You're being cynical. You're trying to prevent an attack. That's cheating too. So then you get back to the conversation that every foul is cheating, and it's not. I don't think they're the same thing. I don't. I think cheating is what the Houston Astros did. I think cheating is what Patrick Reed did.
No, yeah, cheating is Patrick Reed. Cheating, well, then let me ask you this with the Astros. The stealing of signs has been done forever. Is the video element for you
that's
the cheating part?
Yes. That's what changes it, because you're bringing outside elements in to change it. I mean, stealing signs on the field among players on the field or even coaches on the field, don't show your signs. I mean,
or make them more difficult so you don't get figured out.
Yeah. I mean, that's like saying that, well, LSU couldn't adjust because Clemson showed them a different defense than they'd ever seen. LSU has to keep calling the same plays. No, they don't. Once you start to pick up that, well, hey, the catcher's not disguising anything, and he's showing that he's going to, he's asking for a fastball here, I should probably tell my hitter that he's got a fastball coming.
Yeah.
Like, that's on you, not disguising it. But using video, that's bringing other people not involved in the game into it. That's a whole different conversation. And I haven't read all of the things about how they did it, so I don't know all the particulars. But from what I know, that's bringing another outside element into affecting the outcome of the game.
Yeah, video
Players
monitors and
seeing
analysis.
Things, I think, is a different conversation.
Yeah, Tafka says he calls it extreme gamesmanship. I think it's incredibly cynical, but it is within the rules. It's entirely legal. Hate to see it, but I understand it.
I assume.
And Michael Head
is talking about the foul, which I don't hate to see it. I don't. I would want my defender to make that play. I think it's hard for a player to think in that fashion in a game and make that decision in the run of play, because it's a split-second decision. I give him credit for doing it. I don't necessarily hate to see it. I mean, if you're an Atletico fan, of course you hate to see it.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good defensive play. And it's how much of a difference is that and the professional foul? That is celebrated. That's smart. This is smart. And the punishment's severe. That's what you got to do.
Getting back into the coach discussion quickly, Coach Ice Trey added a couple to the mix.
Okay.
He said, plenty of other storylines and scenarios out there. Caleb Porter getting the pieces. Can he do the job again? Almeida decided to stick around. He's got something to prove. Even FDB, after making the team his own, there are others. Orlando's on the up, but I wouldn't say Pareja has a ton to prove this year. There is no wrong answer, though.
Yeah, it's so hard at this point. I think we'll have better answers as we get to the week before the season when rosters are completed and we know. It's interesting that he mentioned Porter and Almeida, because I was really close on both to including them in one of the two categories. I think both are going into their second year. I think both are at clubs with lesser expectations.
Yeah.
And that helps them. I don't think Columbus ownership is expecting a championship this year. I don't think San Jose ownership is expecting a championship this year. I think they're both expecting progress, and I think Columbus is probably better positioned for that progress right now than San Jose is. But I don't think either one is at risk of losing their job, even if they don't show progress, even if they take a little bit of a step back. I think both are more in there for the long haul. I would put them more in that category that we've kind of created through this conversation of being in that Adrian Heath, Jim Curtin level of, if things don't go well this year, they could be feeling that pressure going into 21. I don't think there's really anything that they could do to get on a hot seat in 2020. I think both are there in similar to Oscar Pareja situations, except they've been there for a year. They're there for a long haul. They're there to build. There's no expectation of MLS Cup this year for either club. I think they'll be okay. I think any club that has the MLS Cup expectation has that potential for seats to get hot and pressure to build. Really, Schmetzer in Seattle, he's put 2 trophies in the case. He's a legend there. They could miss the playoffs, and he's not going to feel the hot seat. Outside of that, I think anybody who's in this title conversation could feel it. We've heard whispers in Toronto of fans wanting to move on from Greg Vanney, which I think is unfair.
I held off on Vanney, but I thought about introducing him into this conversation.
I don't think that's fair. The guy won a treble in 2017. The guy went to MLS Cup in 2019 and 2016. How can you put him in this conversation?
It wasn't anything really based on common sense. It was more based on just the level of impatience because of expectation. That was why I was thinking with Vanney.
I don't think their ownership is like that. I think the way they handled it in 2019 was the correct way. They came out around the All-Star break and they said, look, this team's expected to make the playoffs. Period. That's the expectation because they didn't in 2018. They did. They went all the way to MLS Cup. So I don't think coming into this year that he's feeling the pressure. Could he going into 21? Yeah. Could you get people putting pressure on him from the outside? Absolutely. Because I think that's the Toronto fan base now. I think that's maybe some of the Toronto media. That's okay. I don't think he's at risk of losing his job in 2020. And when we're talking about managers feeling pressure in 2020, that's kind of where my head's at. I could see Olsen, Armas, Savarese, Dos Santos as the 4 at most risk of losing their job during 2020.
Yeah.
And Savarese would be at the bottom of that list for me. But I think Portland has high expectations, and there's a lot of questions about the way they finished. So I think they're going to be fine. I don't think that's going to come to fruition, but I think he's the one that could maybe get into that conversation. Olsen, Armas, Dos Santos are the 3 that I would worry about the most.
For me, in looking at Porter and Almeida, I think I was looking at them as more 21 as opposed to 20, because considering the situation in Columbus, Caleb Porter, year 2, looking for growth, okay. Same with Almeida, year 2, looking for growth, okay. So I think that there'd be a level of patience there, but I think that in 21, for me, it would be Porter and Almeida.
I'm not putting them there because I think both do fine. I don't think Caleb Porter's in that conversation. I think Caleb Porter is going to be talked about as a potential coach of the year this year if Columbus has the year that we're talking about. So, no, I don't think he's going to be feeling that pressure. Almeida, maybe. San Jose, I thought they would make more moves coming into this season. They haven't. I think they need to get a little bit stronger. They haven't. Is Almeida going to learn how much he has to adjust this season with San Jose with increased travel in MLS that he hasn't had to deal with before? Did that have an effect on how they finished last year? Don't know. And he's going to have to analyze that. I think he's at more risk of being in that conversation than Porter. If Columbus doesn't make the playoffs this year with the additions that they've brought in, absolutely. But I'm not expecting that to happen.
Tofka and the Colonel have jumped back in. Tofka says that there are 2 differences in the fouls discussion. He says
I love that this is what's got people riled up more than anything. Go ahead.
Number 1, a professional foul is not as dangerous, usually enough to get a whistle, but not nearly enough to harm a player. And
I don't think this one was that dangerous.
And then 2, a professional foul is usually in the initial buildup where a goal-scoring opportunity could come. This was beyond that on both.
Yeah, no, it's definitely beyond that. That's why it's a red card. I don't think it goes beyond that. That's the difference in the punishment. It's not a yellow, it's a red. So I think the rules are fair in this regard. I just don't think you can slant them the other way to award penalties for fouls that happen outside the penalty area.
And then the Colonel has 2 steps, but I'm still waiting on the second step.
Okay.
It says, every foul is not cheating. Deliberately behaving outside the rules to gain an advantage is cheating. Thus, professional foul is cheating. Attempt
that's
is.
consistent. I disagree, but that's consistent. That's cool.
The attempt is to commit a foul, not to win the ball. If you're arguing that the foul in question was an attempt at the ball, then fine. And now I'm waiting for his follow-up.
I just don't put fouls in the cheating conversation as a whole. I do see his logic here. I disagree, but it's consistent logic. I can work with that. I just disagree with it. That's okay. Me and the Colonel are going to be okay.
And his second thought is, although I disagree that the defender had any expectation to get the ball and was thus cheating to prevent a score, my links reference was more to the Trumpster than Patrick Reed.
Yeah, there's that too. That's a whole nother conversation. You
Judge
get into
Smales.
scoring and stuff. That's a whole nother element. I was talking about actually trying to bend the rules to cheat.
Yeah.
It's really hard in a situation like this one because, okay, and this one's so different than the Suarez one. Look, the Suarez one's a deliberate handball. Like, you can't put your hand up there and to play the ball and think that you might be committing a legal play. This one, you are sliding in at the ball. Would this... Okay, let's play this game. Take this foul, put it in the other half of the field, and put it in the 65th minute. Would it be a straight red?
For me, yeah.
Oh, that easy, huh? How many times have you seen that foul happen and not get a straight red?
Well, I was looking at the veracity of it.
Take the situation out of it.
Okay.
It wasn't that bad. He didn't go into he didn't go studs in on the guy's calf. Like, he went in, he was late. He knew he had to get the ball or get the guy. He got the guy. I think
you would say if it's on the other side of the field, it's just a yellow and a professional foul.
No, I think it could. It's not a professional foul because it's a different conversation. I'm just talking about the tackle because some of this has gotten to a point where people are arguing that the tackle was so bad that it'd be a straight red anywhere on the field. I don't know if that's the case. I think some referees would give a red there because it's from behind and they would feel like there's no chance to play the ball. I think some would argue that it wouldn't be. That he was trying to play the ball and he didn't get to the ball and it's not going to be a red. You know, I could see a situation where a play like this, actually go follow the dog-so rules. Did he try to play the ball? That's an argument that you can make. So if you take it to put this in the penalty area, and it would be a penalty for the foul, would it be a dog-so red? I don't think that's a guarantee. So that's why this is a complicated situation. And that's why I think the overreaction of, it should be a penalty, extend the penalty area or the rules, or give referee the ability to bend the rules or have them with leeway to give a penalty here, even though it's outside the area. I think a lot of that's the reaction to the situation, the game state, as opposed to the actual foul.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is definitely valid. That folks are looking at the game state and the situation and turning that into the rationale for their opinion. Yeah.
Hey, it sucks for Atletico. They had the opportunity and they didn't take advantage of it. You know, you've seen the situation before where guys have tried to make that tackle and they haven't been able to get there, or the attacker knew they were coming, was able to evade. You know, this time the attacker wasn't. He gets the free kick. He gets the man advantage for as much time as they have, and they didn't take advantage of it. And then they missed in penalties. Because if you have this situation happen and Atletico wins in the penalty shootout, I don't think anybody's saying these things afterwards. Just like the Suarez-Ghana situation. If Gian makes that penalty resulting from the red card to Suarez deep in stoppage time of extra time, if he converts that penalty and Ghana wins, nobody really thinks much about it. You know, you can't reward the team who didn't take advantage of the situation. So I don't think it's cheating. I understand some of the arguments for that being called cheating. I think cheating's a different conversation than committing a foul. That's just me. And I don't think you can fairly create a rule situation where you would give a penalty here. I love the discussion. I love that it seems like referee stuff and laws of the game stuff gets people riled up as much as anything.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun. Just disagree. It's all good. That's just my opinion. I do want to touch on something before we go about referees and about something that Professional Referees Organization, Pro, and their involvement here, they're doing. I think it's a really good thing, and Pro gets a lot of stick, and they need to get praised when they do things like this. So referee development, something that I've beaten a drum on for a long time. I don't think U.S. Soccer does enough in this regard. Pro has hired Joe Fletcher, former MLS Assistant Referee of the Year. He's been appointed manager of senior assistant referees. His role is going to focus on the training and development of MLS level assistant referees. He'll also help identify future MLS level assistant referees. That's critical. These are the guys that we need involved in these roles. Mark Geiger's in a role like this with Pro. Fletcher's now in a role. This is going to be a big, big, big help. Fletcher is a guy who was one of MLS's best ARs. He's a guy who's been involved on the international stage with FIFA. That experience, that ability, combined with being able to work with young assistant referees, that's going to make refereeing better in MLS and Pro across the board, because Pro handles the USL Championship, League One, all of it. Anything professional, NISA is in it too. Anything professional soccer in the United States, Pro handles the refereeing for it. Having people like Geiger and Fletcher in these roles, it's going to make the referee core better. And we need more of it. So this is a great hire. This is a great situation that Pro has gotten themselves into, and Fletcher's a great addition to the staff.
And in addition to that, what I'm also hoping is that you will have more individuals who would be interested in taking on wanting to be an AR, wanting to be a center ref. When you see movements like this, what Pro is, that was the first thing that popped into my head when I saw this come down.
I think this affects more of people who are already doing it, that think about wanting this to become their career. I don't think this affects a 16-year-old who is thinking about becoming a referee. I think that's at the state association. That's at the club level. That's at a lower level of introduction. This is more about the guys who are doing it and maybe make that understanding, that decision that, hey, I'm not going to be a professional player, but I might end up being a professional referee because I've got people at the state level. I'm getting booked for these tournaments. I'm getting these kinds of games. Now, hey, it really looks like there's a pathway to this. Yeah. All right, I'm going to take it more seriously and take it to that level. I think that's who it affects, which is good and is needed. But I still think there's a huge role for the state, for the club, for U.S. Soccer to get involved in recruiting more referees in, keeping referees in at the grassroots levels, because you don't have enough there, let alone getting to the pro levels. You don't have enough at the grassroots levels. They need more refs, more retainment of referees.
Right.
That's the key. This affects the next level, which is good, but you need focus on the lower level too. You need both.
And we are officially caught up on the Twitters, sir.
All right, we are officially done too. Man, it's been a lot of soccer talking over the last couple of days. Tomorrow, normal show in the morning. We've got stoppage time in the afternoon on Facebook.com/929thegame. I'll be on with Andy and Randy in middays on Radio 2 at 1:20. It's all ramping up. Players will be available for media after training, so probably in the next hour, hour and a half. Make sure you're following all your favorites. Doug Robertson, Felipe Cardenas, Joe Patrick. Make sure you're following everybody that's out at the training ground, because you'll get some quotes, you'll get some updates on things this afternoon. And we'll be back tomorrow to dig into all of it. We'll talk about more off-season moves, Chicharito watch. Want to hear your take on some of the things we talked about today. Best offseason, worst offseason, MLS Cup contenders, managers feeling pressure going into 2020. Tweet at us. Let us know what you think. We'll get into it in Wall Pass Wednesday tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Much obligado, y'all.
Much obligado.